Hello once more. Final video for this week. Going to be relatively short and talking a little bit about jet stream identification, troughs and ridges using water vapor imagery, and we'll look, as we have been doing for the last couple of weeks, a little bit at what's going on in the atmosphere today and identifying some of those features as well. And so we ended up talking a little bit again about this idea of water vapor imagery. The fact that we have some colors here that are dark, indicating that there's dry air in the middle portion of the atmosphere, that radiation being absorbed by the satellite, versus other areas, depending on your color scheme, they're going to be brighter in color, that the ground is not either emitting much radiation or that there is moisture in the atmosphere absorbing that outgoing long wave radiation before it can reach the satellite. And then when we look at these areas of dark near some brighter areas, that we may have some type of a jet stream feature. And so if this will actually toggle down one, we'll see another image here where we're rounding some type of a mid-latitude cyclone. We can start to see this jet stream where we have this darker band meeting up against some brighter colors here. Again, this is some pretty old imagery, 14 years old, and so this isn't going to be as clear as we might see nowadays, but you can still see how this oftentimes is going to cut through this comma head feature. And so something that we don't spend a lot of time talking about, but is important in operations, is we can oftentimes use the jet to kind of find out where that triple point, where our occluded, warm, and cold frontal boundaries are meeting up. And that's another great use of some of this water vapor imagery. And so we'll get back to that one more moment. Actually, let's stop for a moment. Let's actually toggle back over to some of the stuff. Let's talk about this while we're on the idea. And so we can go back to our GOES image viewer. Let's go ahead and select the CONUS. And then band number 9, that mid-level water vapor. Let's animate this. And so we can scroll down here. Again, we do have a scale, these warmer pixels versus these colder pixels where we have some colder cloud tops. And so let's take a look at what's going on here in the country. We can kind of just look at the flow in general through an animation. We can see definitely here across the southern United States some pretty fast moving features from west to east. You can kind of pick up, if we look off the edge of this map, this driving south feature with some banding here. This is actually going to be indicating some type of stable air here across much of the Rockies, but we can definitely pick out some type of a trough feature, maybe a little bit of a jet here, maybe a little bit of a jetlet here, with a pretty intense ridge working its way up into Canada. But again, we can see it spilling over, this brighter color here, working its way down, and then you can really see this arcing around what is an obvious spin here, this idea of a deep trough off the Atlantic coastline out to the Atlantic Ocean, working its way up towards Newfoundland. And so if we take this image and kind of impress upon where we see our troughs, our ridges, this idea of another flow pretty strong here across the southern plains, and now mind you, this is around 20 UTC on Thursday, we can compare that to the observational network from 12Z this morning. And let's see, we got this trough out here across the western United States, pretty good conjunction with some type of a trough feature moving here through the Rockies. We can see this little impingement of stronger winds out here across Nebraska, and that's actually helping to this jet and some of that temperature gradient, helping to reinforce some of these features. You can see a little bit of enhancement to the clouds here across the Dakotas, where there's a lot of winter storm warnings and potential areas of ice and snow. We can see that ridge, though, up into the Canadian prairie before coming down relatively sharply here across the mid-Atlantic states, and then wrapping around very, very strongly around a feature here in the North Atlantic. And again, how that coincides in many ways with what we're seeing here on this water vapor imagery. If we look at the WPC surface analysis, how many instances can we get there? The idea that we have our low here with a little bit of a triple point feature across Minnesota, another low across the central Rockies with a boundary draped back towards Vegas and into eastern California. And so if we think about this jet and this idea of thermal wind balance, separating colder air from warmer air near the surface, finding a jet aloft, definitely take some time to read pages 3 through the end of your handout this week. It's very useful and stuff that will become very pertinent in future classes. But if we look at those features again, we can see that we do find some jets in conjunction where we might find some of our boundaries down here at the surface. Again, you don't oftentimes see boundaries this well defined across portions of the Rockies because it's a little tricky to be able to pick them out with all the terrain that's going on. And so the final thing I'll show here is this image from the Sims blog. This is actually the bottom image on page 5 of your handout this week. And this is showing again this idea of overlaying water vapor imagery. Mind you, this is a little bit older, from 2007. And we can see some red lines there showing wind speed gradient. And so if you look really close, you can see some 80s and 85s, more 85s here. And so here is your jet stream pushing in across central California, and then working its way with a little bit of a ridge across the Rockies. And so that area between the bright and the dark pixels helping to bring out where that boundary might be located. So definitely take some time to read up on this within your handout, but let's go back to our top hat slides and kind of knock out the rest of these slides here. Cirrus clouds. How do we identify cirrus clouds? Visible image is going to show up pretty bright white. They're reflecting pretty well. We also know that cirrus clouds are cold and they're going to show up as such on infrared imagery. Stratus clouds may be layered, but also are going to be significantly warmer than cirrus clouds due to their proximity to Earth's surface. And so oftentimes in an image where we have stratus in conjunction with cirrus, you're going to see brighter pixels with the cirrus and more gray or dark gray pixels in association with stratus. The fact that stratus often show up in sheets and may also conform to terrain means that in certain parts, here we have New Mexico and Colorado, we may have some of this stratus kind of being cut by some of the higher terrain. It'll basically build into that terrain and be dammed up by the higher terrain. Finally, likely many of your favorites, or many of you, this is your favorite type of cloud, the cumulonimbus. Again, here we're looking heavily at the idea of visible imagery and being able to identify our cumulonimbus clouds. The texture with the intense updrafts. The fact that as we work our way late in the day, we may be able to see some type of shadowing effect as the sun sets to the west. This may actually produce literal shadows underneath some of your cumulonimbus tops. But even during the bright portion of the day, we can still pick out these textures as we have tops that are getting higher and higher and up towards colder and colder temperatures in the atmosphere. And so that concludes our lectures for this week. I hope this has helped you to learn a little bit more about what goes on with satellites, the meteorological implications of understanding satellite, and if nothing else, I strongly encourage you to head back, take a look at this the website that we have here, if it will actually click on there. From NESDIS, this GOES image viewer. Again, the link should take you likely to one of these pages, and here's where you can scroll around to all of the different bands and get a feel for what's going on. And let's face it, everyone wants to look at a sandwich plot, right? Take care, have a good rest of your week, and we'll be giving you some more videos before long on features such as soundings and skew T imagery. Take care, stay healthy.